So I'm talking today about basically the fact that history and English and history, in my mind and in kind of the things I've done so far, they're essentially the same thing. And I'm going to try and illustrate today how recognising that has helped myself, but also helped my history department, and then kind of what we can do to ensure those links are made a little bit stronger. Okay, so I've tried to kind of give a little bit of Venn diagram for all the numeracy fans in the room, and as you can see, history teachers make castles out of toilet rolls, and English teachers quote poetry that makes, well, no sense to anybody else beyond English teachers. And for me, that's where the kind of differences stop. Because in terms of a literacy level, we deal with these same problems together: parliament, parliament, and I'm sure you've seen dozens of others. But on a kind of more serious level is that, you know, students can't do certain things that, well, we are supposed to teach them, but that they also can't do for us, okay? So they can't evaluate, they can't think about evidence, they can't, well, develop extended responses. You know, you guys have got the closest kind of marking problem to us. You've got these big extended essay responses. They can't do them a lot of the time. And so if we can work with you and you can work with us, we can kind of kill two birds with one stone and make it a bit better. I've also thought in terms of our nature, we deal with stuff that's kind of in the past, which is as vague an answer as I can do. Apologies to Alice, our head of history and, you know, organiser today, but she doesn't like the word stuff, but it was the best I can think of. Sorry, Alice, really sorry. Sorry. But we also, you know, we're very similar in our people. We're massive geeks for our subject, and we visit places for fun and pay to visit places that no, you know, you take a school trip there, you're like, yes, this is amazing, look, that's 800 years old, that was. Like, what, I don't care. You know, I went past Samuel Taylor Coleridge's cottage on our trip down to Somerset at February half term, and I'm sat in the window, look, it's Coleridge's cottage, he wrote Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner there. So my girlfriend just was so nonplussed about it. So I think it's a unique kind of geekery that we share. But also, some things like, we go on great trips together, and ideally we'll talk about that in a little bit more. We're better, you're a better history student if you read more, you're a better English student if you read more. And then I suppose the marking, definitely the marking. All right, we've got mock exams at the minute. Maths department complain, oh, you got this and this. Alice has got a day to turn around, I think 20 exam papers. You know, if she was just going tick, 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 she'd be fine. She's not. Same way I'm taking like 2 weeks to do mine. But I think this is really the most kind of the driving thing. I don't think a student can be a good historian if they're not good at English. And I don't think they can be good at English if they're not good at history. And so it stands to reason that we kind of, as departments, do as much work as we can together, do as much kind of supporting, as much kind of, well, assisting as we can, because I can't teach my subject without them being good historians. And I know Alice can't get grade 9s out of her kids unless they're good at English. Okay, they need to be literate, they need to be well written. This is our Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4 curriculum for English, and these are a kind of cross-section of the text we teach. Some of them are dead straightforward, some are dead familiar. But they cannot do any of those, well, they cannot study those if they don't know the history. Okay, so trying to do a little bit, there. They can't do A View from the Bridge if they don't understand things like, well, the way the American Dream. They don't, understand the kind of the problems in Macbeth if they don't understand the nature of kings and the way they kind of power play and things like that. All right, they don't understand Blood Brother if they don't understand what Thatcher did to the North. And as a consequence, I have to spend some time talking about the destruction of the North by Thatcher. But as a more kind of more specific element, I teach Percy Shelley, he's my favourite poet, and they can't, my kids can't get a really good mark on Percy Shelley's poetry if they don't understand the fact that he's a radical, he's radical politically, that he writes poems around the time of Peterloo Massacre. They need to understand that in order to understand his poetry. They can't get a good grade if they don't understand what's gone on around that poem, what's motivating. Because every single piece of literature that's ever been written, it comes from a place within that writer and everything that was going on has influenced that writer. And so as a consequence, they need to know what was going on. You know, they need to understand, like a couple of people said, like our friend from Beamish said, you know, Scrooge and the way that that's governed by real things, appalling things, sadly that are making their way back into society. But they won't be able to get a grade 9 if they can't talk about everything that's going on. They can't talk about the poor law, they can't talk about the famine during the 1840s that started to cause from the Industrial Revolution on a simple level. I take it as far as I can. But on a kind of, you know, for all you fans of exam boards and specifications, this is the AQA history GCSE assessment objectives, and this is the English language one for us that myself and Alice both teach, and they're basically the same. You know, they literally have, it's analyse, evaluate, explain, all right, make judgments. In here it's evaluate, use sources, analyse, explain, find information. They're the same topic. You know, we're teaching the same skills, so it, well, makes sense for us to teach, you know, together, okay? Now, these are just a couple of ideas, there's dozens of others. Obviously, things like reading lists, I've put one together for Alice about America, I think it was, yeah? Things like guest sessions, again, we've been in one another's lessons, we've been in one another's classrooms, and you know, if she's struggling to teach evaluate questions, I'll come in and try and teach that. We'll teach her how to structure an answer rather than just, you know, you guys can deal with the subject knowledge, but see if there's an English teacher that can support you with the construction of the answer, because we're doing it all the time. It's our kind of bread and butter. So it's just any way that we can help one another. Learn from one another. We teach very similar kind of analytical, critical thinking lessons. Go in and see how I'm doing it with Romeo and Juliet, and I'll come in and see how you do it with like source analysis. Timing things really effectively, so, you know, so trying to bring a little bit more kind of, you know, I suppose a connection between. So we teach World War I poetry in Year 8. Can we teach World War I in Year 8 at the same time, so that we're not going, oh, well, we've done this with Miss Southern, or they've done this with Mr. Hesford, it's boring then, why is it going to be different now? It won't. I always make them enthusiastic about it. I do! Yeah, Miss Southern comes past my room and goes, you're always talking about history, you're always shouting. It'd be really useful if, yeah, I'd like to. This is essentially a job interview that, so yeah. If, you know, you stop later and go, I'd be a really good history teacher. That guy seems like he'd be really good. Yeah, Alice over there, tell her that, please. Bit of collaborative planning. So again, I, you know, got Alice on board to help with my animal farm scheme of work, just to get a few facts about the Russian Revolution spot on. Joint trips, joint events. I'm cooking up this idea of a literature/history tour of Berlin that I'm far too disorganised to actually organise myself, but it's a great idea and it would be really empowering and really powerful. But things like that, really good. And I suppose the last two, the simplest and the easiest things, promote one another. You know, Alice jokes that I'm always teaching history, but I'm trying to get them to see that history isn't something that just exists in her classroom or on her corridor. It's a living, breathing entity that they need to be, you know, buzzing about. I've got loads of history books on my shelf and I give them to read. I'm talking about history all the time, any excuse, any opportunity. I do a little bit more when I know Alice is on a free. It's like, oh, Miss Southern, we're just talking about this. And then I've, you know, put this really detailed thing together. But the thing with it is that if we can, you know, make the students value one, then we can make the students value the other in theory, because as I hope I've tried to illustrate, and I think a lot of people who've already presented have illustrated, that they're basically the same subject. They're basically the same thing. We're dealing with the same material. And I think we deal with it in a passionate way that is quite unique to the two sets of teachers. So there, I suppose, the last two are the most important things I would say. I think the work that history departments and English departments can do together is going to be really powerful, really inspiring, and help both subjects grow, not just for good exam results, but for, well, a love of both topics, because they're both the two most important topics in school. I hope that was a bang. I didn't really expect to have to bang, but there you go. Thank you very much, guys.